My name is Emma Carter, and I am 33 years old. If you met me today, you'd probably see a woman who looks like she has it all figured out. A stable career, a sleek apartment in the heart of the city, and the kind of confidence that comes from surviving storms most people never imagine. I work as a senior data analyst at a thriving tech company, and my salary is more than I ever thought possible when I was a little girl counting coins at the kitchen table with my dad. On paper, my life looks like a success story. But the truth is, every achievement I've earned has been carved out of pain, abandonment, and a determination that sometimes felt like it was the only thing keeping me alive. I wasn't born into privilege. I wasn't the girl with a silver spoon, or a mother who cheered from the sidelines at every school play. In fact, my earliest memory of my mother is of her leaving. I was 9 years old when she walked out of our lives, suitcase in hand, eyes fixed on a future that didn't include me or my father. She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. She didn't even look back. She just left. And in that moment, my childhood ended. My father, a quiet man with tired eyes and calloused hands, became my entire world. He worked himself to the bone to keep us afloat, running a small diner that barely paid the bills. I learned early what it meant to go without, to stretch $1 until it tore, and to pretend I wasn't hungry when the fridge was nearly empty. That kind of upbringing shapes you. It hardens you, but it also plants a fire inside. I promised myself that I would never depend on anyone the way my father had depended on her. I would never let someone else's choices dictate my survival. And so I worked. I studied. I clawed my way out of the shadows she left behind. Every late night with textbooks, every shift bussing tables, every tear I swallowed instead of letting it break me, it all built the woman I am today. A woman who thought she had finally outrun her past. But the past has a way of finding you, doesn't it? It waits in the corners of your life, patient and silent, until the moment it decides to knock on your door. For me, that knock came one crisp autumn evening. I remember the sound, sharp, deliberate, echoing through the quiet of my apartment. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends always texted before dropping by, and my father lived hours away. When I opened the door, my world tilted. There she was, my mother, the woman who had abandoned me decades ago, standing in front of me as if no time had passed. And beside her, slouched and smirking, was my half-brother Liam, the son she chose to raise instead of me. Her smile was wide, rehearsed, almost theatrical. "Emma, my sweet girl," she said, reaching out as though we were long-lost friends. My body froze. I didn't hug her. I didn't even move. I just stared, my heart pounding in my chest, torn between rage and disbelief. Liam barely looked up from his phone, muttering a lazy greeting before stepping into my apartment like he owned the place. In that instant, I knew this wasn't a reunion. This wasn't about love or regret or reconciliation. This was about something else. And I was about to find out just how far they were willing to go. I wish I could tell you that I slammed the door in their faces, that I protected myself from the storm they brought with them. But the truth is, I let them in. I let them sit on my couch. I let them look around at the life I had built. And I listened as my mother's words dripped with false warmth. She told me she was proud of me, that she had missed me, that she wanted to reconnect. But beneath every word was a calculation, a sharpness in her eyes that betrayed her real motive. And when she finally revealed what she wanted, what they both wanted, the betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever felt before. That night was the beginning of a battle I never asked for. A battle not just for my money, but for my peace, my safety, and my very sense of family. It forced me to confront the wounds I thought I had buried, to face the truth about the woman who gave me life but never gave me love. And it tested everything I thought I knew about loyalty, trust, and survival. This is my story. It's not just about money. It's about betrayal, resilience, and the painful realization that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. When I think back to my childhood, it feels like a different lifetime. I was 9 years old when my world cracked open, when the woman who was supposed to be my anchor simply walked away. I can still see it. The fading light of an Ohio evening, the sound of a zipper closing on a suitcase, the way my mother's heels clicked against the worn linoleum floor of our kitchen. She didn't cry. She didn't kneel down to hug me or whisper that she loved me. She just left. And in that silence, I learned what abandonment feels like. My father, Daniel Carter, was left standing in the doorway, his face pale and his hands trembling. He didn't chase after her. Maybe he knew it was useless. Maybe he was too broken to try. From that night on, it was just the two of us. He ran a small diner on the edge of town, the kind of place with squeaky stools, chipped coffee mugs, and a neon sign that buzzed louder than the conversations inside. It wasn't glamorous, and it barely paid the bills, but it was all we had. I remember sitting at the counter after school, my legs swinging off the stool, watching him flip pancakes with one hand while ringing up customers with the other. His hands were always rough, his eyes always tired, but he never complained. He'd come home long after midnight, smelling of grease and coffee, and still ask me about my day. He tried to hide the stress, but I saw it in the way his shoulders slumped when he thought I wasn't looking. Money was always tight. Rent notices piled up on the kitchen table, and sometimes the fridge was so empty it echoed when I opened it. I learned early how to make a single box of macaroni stretch for 2 meals, how to pretend I wasn't hungry so Dad could eat. He'd tell me, "Emma, you're stronger than you know. You can do anything." And I clung to those words like a lifeline. By the time I was 13, I couldn't stand watching him struggle alone. I started babysitting for neighbors, staying up late to watch their kids while I studied by flashlight. Soon I was stocking shelves at the corner store, cleaning houses after school, even delivering newspapers before dawn. My hands ached from scrubbing floors, my legs burned from biking miles with a heavy bag of papers, but I never complained. Every dollar I earned went straight to Dad. Groceries, the electric bill, whatever kept us afloat. He argued with me, said I should be a kid, not a breadwinner. But I couldn't just sit by. It was my way of fighting back against the void my mother left behind. School became my escape. Numbers made sense when nothing else did. Equations had answers, patterns had logic, and in math club I felt like I belonged somewhere. I'd stay late, poring over problems until the janitor flicked the lights to remind me it was time to go. At home, Dad would sit with me at our worn kitchen table, his eyelids heavy but his voice steady as he helped me with homework. He didn't always understand the formulas, but he understood me. And that was enough. Still, the ache of my mother's absence never left. I'd stare at her old photographs, wondering why I wasn't enough for her to stay. On my birthdays, a card would arrive in the mail, a few cold words scrawled in her handwriting. "Happy birthday. Hope you're doing well." No calls, no visits. Just those cards, piling up in a drawer like reminders that I was an afterthought. Each one stung more than it comforted. By high school, I had learned to depend on no one but myself. I saved every penny, studied harder than anyone else, and vowed that I would never need anyone the way I had once needed her. My father was my anchor, but I knew he couldn't carry us forever. I had to build my own path, and I did, one grueling step at a time. I buried myself in textbooks, staying up late to master calculus and ace every exam. My guidance counselor noticed my determination and pushed me towards scholarships. At 17, I won a full ride to a state university for data analytics, a field that clicked with my love for patterns and answers. That scholarship was my escape, my ticket out of the cycle of struggle. But even with tuition covered, I was on my own for everything else. Books, rent, meals. There was no safety net, no cushion. Just me, my grit, and the promise I had made to myself that I would never let my past define me. Looking back, those years shaped me more than any degree or job title ever could. They taught me resilience, sacrifice, and the brutal truth that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who leave you to fend for yourself. And though I didn't know it then, Those lessons would become the armor I needed for the battles still ahead. When I first stepped onto the campus of the state university, it felt like I had landed on another planet. The buildings towered above me, sleek and modern, their glass windows reflecting the sunlight like promises of a brighter future. Students hurried past with backpacks slung over their shoulders, laughing, chatting, living lives that seemed so carefree. I remember standing there with my acceptance letter clutched in my hand, my heart pounding with both excitement and fear. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was stepping into a world where I could actually build something for myself. I had earned a full scholarship in data analytics, a field that felt like it had been designed for me. Numbers had always been my refuge, patterns my secret language. While other kids doodled in their notebooks, I solved equations. While others dreamed of parties, I dreamed of algorithms. That scholarship wasn't just a ticket to education. It was my escape hatch from the cycle of poverty and abandonment. But even with tuition covered, life was far from easy. Scholarships don't pay for books, rent, or food. They don't cover the endless little expenses that pile up when you're living on your own. So I worked. I worked like my life depended on it, because it did. My mornings started before dawn. I'd wake up at 5, throw on my uniform, and head to the campus diner where I waited tables. The smell of burnt coffee and fried eggs clung to my clothes as I balanced trays and memorized orders, all while mentally rehearsing formulas for my next exam. After classes, I'd rush to my second job as an office assistant at a small law firm downtown. I filed papers, answered phones, and learned how to smile politely even when exhaustion made my vision blur. And when the office lights finally dimmed, I'd head to my third job, cleaning offices late into the night. I wiped down desks, emptied trash cans, and vacuumed floors until my arms ached. By the time I stumbled back to my dorm, it was often past midnight. Sleep became a luxury. My body screamed for rest, but my mind refused to quit. I'd sit at my desk, eyelids heavy, forcing myself to code one more program, to solve one more problem set. I lived on caffeine and sheer determination. There were nights when I cried quietly into my pillow, wondering if I could really keep going. But then I'd remember my father's words. "You're stronger than you know, Emma. You can do anything." And I'd push through. Despite the exhaustion, I thrived academically. I joined the data science club, where I finally found people who spoke my language, people who got excited about algorithms and machine learning models. We'd spend hours huddled over laptops, debating solutions, challenging each other, and celebrating small victories. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. One summer, I landed an internship at a tech startup. It was intense, long hours, tight deadlines, and projects that pushed me to my limits. But I loved it. I loved the thrill of solving problems that mattered, of seeing my work make a difference. That internship sharpened my skills and gave me a glimpse of the life I wanted. A life where I wasn't just surviving, but thriving. Still, the shadow of my mother lingered. Every year, like clockwork, a birthday card arrived. The handwriting was hers, but the words were hollow. "Happy birthday. Hope you're doing well." That was it. No phone call, no visit, just a reminder that she existed somewhere out there, living a life that didn't include me. I'd tuck the card into a drawer and try to forget, but the ache never fully went away. By the time I graduated, I was a different person. I had a degree, a stack of awards, and a job offer waiting for me in a city far from the small town where I'd grown up. I had survived years of exhaustion, loneliness, and sacrifice, and I had proven to myself that I could build a future out of nothing. Walking across that stage in my cap and gown, I searched the crowd for my father. When I saw him, his eyes shining with pride, his hands clapping harder than anyone else's, I felt a lump rise in my throat. He had been my anchor, my constant, the one person who never left. That diploma wasn't just mine, it was his too. I thought in that moment that I had finally outrun my past, that I had left behind the pain of abandonment and carved out a new life defined by my own choices. But I was wrong. The past has a way of finding you, no matter how far you run. And mine was waiting for me, patient and relentless, ready to knock on my door when I least expected it. Graduating from university felt like stepping out of a tunnel I had been crawling through for years. For so long, my life had been about survival, working 3 jobs, scraping by, proving to myself that I could endure. But when I walked across that stage in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, I felt the weight of possibility pressing down on me. For the first time, the future wasn't just a dream. It was real, and it was mine to shape. I accepted a job offer in Atlanta, a city buzzing with energy and opportunity. The move was terrifying. I had never lived anywhere but Ohio, but it was also exhilarating. I packed my life into 2 suitcases, hugged my father tighter than I ever had before, and boarded a bus that carried me toward a new beginning. The first months in Atlanta were a blur. I started as a junior data analyst at a mid-sized tech company, and I threw myself into the work with the same relentless drive that had carried me through college. I was the first one in the office, the last one to leave. I volunteered for projects no one else wanted, stayed late to debug code, and taught myself new programming languages on weekends. My colleagues noticed. My managers noticed. Within 2 years, I was promoted to a senior role, leading projects that shaped the company's future. With each promotion came a salary that felt surreal compared to the life I had known. I went from counting coins at the grocery store to swiping my card without fear. I rented a sleek apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. I filled it with furniture I chose, not hand-me-downs or thrift store finds. For the first time, my home felt like mine, a space that reflected who I was becoming. But even as I built this new life, I never forgot where I came from. My father was still running the diner back in Ohio, his body worn down from decades of long hours. As soon as I could, I started sending him money every month. At first, it was just a few $100s to help with bills. Later, it was enough to cover repairs on the diner's leaky roof, to replace his broken refrigerator, to fix his old car. He protested, of course. He said he didn't want my money, that he was fine. But I insisted. It wasn't charity, it was gratitude. It was my way of easing the burden he had carried alone for so long. Every time we spoke on the phone, his voice cracked with pride. "Emma, you're my greatest achievement," he'd say, and those words meant more to me than any promotion or paycheck. In Atlanta, I also found something I had never truly experienced before. Friendship. Real friendship. My colleagues became more than coworkers. They became my chosen family. We celebrated birthdays together, stayed late in the office laughing over takeout, and supported each other through deadlines and setbacks. For someone who had grown up feeling abandoned, those connections were everything. I also began to explore the city itself. Atlanta was alive in a way my small Ohio town never had been. I wandered through bustling markets, tried foods I'd never tasted before, and discovered a love for live music. On weekends, I'd sit in coffee shops with my laptop, working on side projects just for the joy of it. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Still, the shadow of my mother lingered. Every year, like clockwork, a birthday card arrived. The handwriting was hers, but the words were as hollow as ever. "Happy birthday. Hope you're doing well." That was it. No phone call, no visit. Just a reminder that she existed somewhere out there, living a life that didn't include me. I told myself I didn't care, that I had moved on. But late at night, when the city lights flickered outside my window, I'd find myself staring at those cards, wondering why I hadn't been enough for her to stay. By the time I turned 30, I had everything I thought I wanted: a career I loved, financial stability, a home that was truly mine, friends who felt like family, and a father who, despite everything, was still my anchor. I thought I had finally outrun my past. But the past has a way of finding you. It waits in the shadows, patient and silent, until the moment it decides to reappear. For me, that moment came one autumn evening, when a sharp knock on my apartment door shattered the fragile peace I had built. When I opened the door, I saw her, my mother. The woman who had walked out of my life decades ago, standing there as if no time had passed. And beside her, slouched and smirking, was Liam, the half-brother I barely knew, the son she had chosen to raise instead of me. That night would change everything. It was a crisp autumn evening when the knock came. I remember it so clearly because I had just settled into my usual routine. Laptop open on the coffee table, a mug of tea steaming beside me, the city lights glittering through my apartment windows. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends always texted before dropping by, and my father lived too far away to surprise me. The knock was sharp, deliberate, and it sent a chill down my spine. When I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. Standing there was a face I hadn't seen in over 2 decades. My mother, Marie, the woman who had walked out of my life when I was 9 years old, suitcase in hand, never looking back. And beside her, slouched against the doorframe with his eyes glued to his phone, was Liam, my half-brother, the son she had chosen to raise instead of me. For a moment, I couldn't move. My body froze, my mind racing. She looked older, of course, faint lines around her eyes, hair dyed a shade too dark to be natural. But her smile was wide, rehearsed, almost theatrical. "Emma, my sweet girl," she said, her voice dripping with warmth that felt foreign, fake. She stepped forward, arms open as if we were long-lost friends reunited. I didn't hug her. I didn't even step aside at first. But Liam brushed past me without waiting for an invitation, muttering a half-hearted "hey" as he sprawled onto my couch like he owned the place. His sneakers landed on my coffee table, scuffing the polished wood. My stomach twisted. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the tiny, foolish part of me that had always wondered what it would be like if she came back. She sat across from me, her eyes darting around my apartment, lingering on the sleek furniture, the view of the skyline. I could see the calculation in her gaze, the way she was measuring my success, tallying it up like numbers on a ledger. She started with small talk, how much she had missed me, how proud she was of the woman I'd become. Her words were smooth, but they felt hollow, like lines from a script she had rehearsed on the way over. And then, just as quickly, she got to the point. "I heard you're doing so well," she said, leaning forward, her smile tightening. "Big job, good money. Liam's starting college soon and tuition is, well, it's a lot, $60,000. We were hoping you could help. Just a little support, maybe $3,000 a month, to keep us afloat." Her words hit me like a punch. 60,000, 3,000 a month. The numbers were staggering, but it wasn't the money that stung the most. It was the entitlement in her tone, the casual way she asked as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Liam finally looked up from his phone, smirking. "Nice place," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Kind of small for someone making bank like you. You could do better." He leaned back, scrolling again, as if my life, my home, my hard-earned success were nothing more than a backdrop for his arrogance. I sat there, my heart pounding, torn between disbelief and fury. This wasn't a reunion. This wasn't about love or regret or reconciliation. This was a transaction. I asked them how they had found me. My mother waved it off, saying she had heard things through old friends. Her vagueness set off alarms in my head. She went on, painting a picture of struggle, her voice soft, almost pleading, but her eyes sharp, watching my every reaction. "You've got so much now, Emma," she said. "Family helps family, right?" That word, family, hit me like a slap. Where had she been when Dad and I were scraping by, when I was working nights to afford groceries, when I was crying myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't enough for her to stay? Part of me wanted to believe her, to see this as a chance to mend things. I had spent years wondering what it would be like to have her back, to hear her explain why she left. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment I had been waiting for. But doubt gnawed at me. Her sudden appearance, her fixation on my income, Liam's smug entitlement. It all felt too convenient, too calculated. I told them I needed time to think, that $60,000 wasn't something I could just hand over. Her smile faltered, and Liam scoffed, muttering something about me being stingy. They left soon after, my mother hugging me a little too long, her perfume cloying, her voice promising to call. When the door closed behind them, I stood in the silence of my apartment, my heart pounding. I hated myself for the flicker of hope I still felt, the tiny part of me that wanted her to mean it when she said she had missed me. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't about family. This was about money. And I had just opened the door to a storm I wasn't sure I was ready to face. After that first visit, I told myself it was over. I convinced myself that my mother and Liam would realize how unreasonable their demands were and simply disappear back into whatever life they had built without me. But deep down, I knew better. People like them don't just walk away when they smell money. They circle back, hungrier, bolder, more desperate. The next time I saw them, it wasn't at my apartment. It was at a crowded cafe in downtown Orlando. My mother had texted me that morning, her message dripping with false sweetness. "Emma, let's talk. Just coffee. I miss you." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe some part of me still wanted answers, still wanted to hear her explain why she had left. Maybe I wanted to believe she could change. The cafe was buzzing with life when I walked in, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of cups, the hum of conversations. I spotted them immediately in the corner. My mother sat upright, her smile wide and practiced, while Liam slouched in his chair, his phone glowing in his hands. My stomach knotted as I approached. "Emma, darling," she said, reaching for my hand as I sat down. I pulled back before she could touch me. Her smile faltered for a split second, then returned, tighter this time. She launched into her story, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. She claimed my father had kept her away, that he had made it impossible for her to stay in touch. "I tried, Emma," she said, her eyes wide with feigned sadness. "I wanted to be there for you, but your father shut me out." Her lies hit me like a slap. I knew the truth. I had lived it. My father had begged her to call, to visit, to be a part of my life. She had chosen her new family instead. Hearing her twist the story, painting herself as the victim, made my blood boil. Before I could respond, Liam chimed in, his voice smug. "Yeah, and now I need a car for campus. Something decent. A Mustang, maybe, and a new phone. This one's trash." He tossed his cracked screen onto the table like it was proof of his suffering. I stared at him, stunned. "You're asking for a car and a phone on top of $60,000 for tuition?" My voice was steady but sharp. Liam rolled his eyes. "You're loaded, Emma. What's the big deal?" My mother jumped in, her tone pleading now. "We're family, Emma. You've got so much. Can't you share a little?" That word again. Family. She wielded it like a weapon, trying to guilt me into submission. But I wasn't that 9-year-old girl anymore. I had built my life from nothing, brick by brick, while she had abandoned me without a second thought. "I worked for everything I have," I said, my voice firm. "Dad and I had nothing after you left. I'm not a bank." Her face hardened, the mask slipping. "You're so selfish," she spat. "I gave you life, and this is how you repay me?" Her words cut deep, reopening old wounds I thought had healed, but I refused to let her see me break. Liam scoffed, muttering under his breath. "Figures you'd be like this. Dad was right about you." His words were a jab, a reminder that his father, the man my mother had chosen over us, had poisoned him against me. The argument escalated quickly. My mother raised her voice, blaming me for her absence. "If you'd reached out, things could have been different," she said, her eyes flashing with anger. I shot back, my voice shaking with years of pent-up hurt. "You left when I was 9. You sent cards, not calls. Don't put this on me." The cafe grew quiet. People turned to stare, their conversations silenced by the storm unfolding at our table. But I didn't care. I had swallowed my pain for too long. Liam leaned forward, his voice rising. "You think you're too good for us now, don't you? You owe us, Emma. After everything we've been through, you owe us. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. I don't owe you anything. My mother grabbed my arm, her grip tight, her face twisted with frustration. You'll regret this, Emma, she hissed. I yanked my arm free and walked out, my chest aching with a mix of fury and grief. The cool air outside hit me like a wave, but it didn't calm me. My heart pounded, my hands shook, and tears stung my eyes. I had wanted to believe she might have changed, that maybe there was a chance for reconciliation, but she hadn't come back for me. She had come back for my money. And I knew, as I walked away from that cafe, that this was only the beginning. I thought the cafe confrontation would be the end of it. I thought my mother and Liam would storm off, lick their wounds, and decide I wasn't worth the trouble, but I underestimated them. People like that don't retreat when they smell money. They double down. And that's exactly what they did. It was only a few days later when my apartment buzzer rang. I was at my desk, trying to focus on a project deadline, when the sharp buzz jolted me. My stomach dropped. I knew before I even checked the intercom who it was. Against every instinct screaming at me to ignore it, I pressed the button. There they were again. My mother, her smile tighter this time, her eyes darting nervously. And Liam, leaning against the wall, scrolling on his phone with that same bored, entitled expression. Emma, she said, her voice overly sweet. We just want to talk. I should have slammed the door. I should have told them to leave. But some part of me, maybe the part that still longed for answers, for closure, let them in. The moment they stepped inside, the air in my apartment shifted. Liam sprawled across my couch like he owned it, sneakers on the cushions, while my mother perched on the edge of a chair, clutching her purse like it contained the script for her performance. I stayed near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching them closely. She started with small talk again, asking about my job, my apartment, my life. But her questions were too pointed, too calculated. How much do you make now, Emma? How do you manage your money? Do you have investments? Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, hungry. Then her voice hardened. You're doing so well, Emma. Why can't you help us? Liam deserves a chance. Liam nodded without looking up. Yeah, it's not like you're broke. Their insistence felt like a trap. I kept my answers vague, my unease growing. I excused myself to grab a glass of water, needing a moment to breathe. But when I returned, my heart nearly stopped. Liam was at my desk. My laptop screen glowed, and he was clicking through my browser. My banking app was open. What are you doing? I snapped, rushing over. He shrugged, smirking. Just checking it out. My mother jumped in, her voice defensive. We were just curious, Emma. You've got so much. Why hide it? Her words confirmed my worst fears. They weren't just after my generosity. They were after my accounts. I yanked the laptop away, my hands shaking. You don't touch my stuff, I said, my voice low but firm. On the screen, I saw it. My financial dashboard open, login attempts logged, a browser tab with my bank's password reset page. My stomach churned, and then it hit me. The email I'd received days earlier, a forwarded message from my father's account detailing my job and salary. At the time, I'd thought it was odd, but now I understood. My mother had hacked his email. She had violated his trust to dig into my life. You hacked Dad's email, I said, my voice trembling with fury. Her face paled, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she lashed out. Your father's a failure, Emma. Running that pathetic diner, dragging you down with him. I had to know how you turned out so well. Her words were venom, tearing into the man who had sacrificed everything for me. Liam snickered. Yeah, he's a loser. You're better than that. Their cruelty ignited something in me, a fire I hadn't felt in years. I stepped toward them, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me. Get out, or I'm calling the police. My mother's eyes widened, her composure cracking. You'd call the cops on your own mother? She hissed. Liam scoffed, tossing his phone onto the couch. "Chill, it's not that serious." But his voice wavered. I didn't back down. I held up my phone, my thumb hovering over the keypad. "You broke into Dad's email. You tried to access my accounts. That's serious enough." For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. She grabbed Liam's arm, pulling him toward the door. "You're making a mistake, Emma," she warned, her voice cold. "We're not done." They stormed out, leaving the air heavy with tension. I locked the door behind them, my hands trembling. When I sat back at my desk, the evidence was all there. Multiple failed login attempts. A browser tab opened to my bank's password reset page, proof that they had been digging, trying to unravel everything I had built. The betrayal was staggering, not just to me, but to my father, who had never betrayed her, who had only ever tried to hold our family together. She had violated him again, just as she had violated me. That night, I realized something with chilling clarity. This wasn't just about money. This was about control, about power, about tearing down the life I had built. And I knew then that if I didn't fight back, they would never stop. The night after I caught Liam at my laptop, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding, my mind replaying every detail. The open banking app, the failed login attempts, the email forwarded from my father's account. It wasn't just a violation of my privacy. It was a declaration of war. My mother and Liam weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. The first thing I did the next morning was call my dad. My hands shook as I dialed his number, and when he answered, his voice was warm but tired. I hated adding to his burdens, but he needed to know. "Dad," I said, my throat tight, "Mom hacked your email. She used it to find out about my job, my salary, and she and Liam tried to get into my bank accounts." There was silence on the line, then a heavy sigh. "That sounds like Marie," he said quietly. "She always twisted things to suit herself." I could hear the weariness in his voice, the resignation of a man who had been betrayed by her too many times. He confirmed that his email had been acting strange, that someone had changed his password weeks ago. It crushed me to hear how she had violated his trust again, but it also hardened my resolve. "I'm not letting her do this to us anymore," I told him. "I'm going to fight back." The next day, I reached out to a lawyer. His name was Mark Sullivan, a sharp, methodical man with a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. I sat in his office, my laptop open, showing him the screenshots of login attempts, the forwarded email from my dad's account, the evidence of her intrusion. "This is serious, Emma," he said, his voice steady. "What your mother and half-brother did isn't just unethical. It's illegal. Unauthorized access to your accounts, hacking into your father's email, attempting to steal financial information. These are crimes, and you have proof." Hearing him say it out loud was both terrifying and validating. For so long, I had carried the weight of my mother's betrayal as if it were my fault. But now, here was someone telling me that I wasn't crazy, that what she had done was wrong, legally, morally, in every way. Mark didn't waste time. He guided me through the process of filing for a restraining order at the Orlando courthouse. The paperwork was grueling, page after page of details, but I poured everything into it. Every incident, every attempt, every violation. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was protecting my father, too. The hearings were some of the hardest days of my life. Sitting in that courtroom, facing my mother across the aisle was like reopening every wound she had ever inflicted. She looked at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief, as if I were the one betraying her. Liam sat beside her, arms crossed, his expression smug. But I held my ground. I told the judge everything. I showed the evidence. I spoke about the knock on my door, the cafe confrontation, the intrusion into my apartment, the hacked email, the attempted access to my accounts. My voice shook at times, but I didn't back down. Weeks later, the ruling came. The court granted a permanent restraining order against my mother and Liam, barring them from contacting me or coming near my home. When the judge's gavel came down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a shield, a line drawn in the sand that said, "Enough." For the first time in months, I could breathe. I could walk into my apartment without looking over my shoulder, without wondering if they would show up uninvited. I could open my laptop without fearing that someone was trying to pry into my life. But even as relief washed over me, I knew this wasn't the end. People like my mother don't respect boundaries. They don't stop just because a judge tells them to. And deep down, I knew she would try again. Still, I had taken the first step. I had stood up to her, not as the abandoned little girl she had left behind, but as the woman I had become. Strong, independent, unafraid to fight for what was mine. And for the first time, I realized something powerful. She no longer had control over me. For a few weeks after the restraining order was granted, I allowed myself to breathe. I walked into my apartment without fear of finding them waiting. I opened my laptop without dreading another intrusion. For the first time in months, I felt like I had reclaimed my life. But peace, I would learn, was fragile. It started with a notification from my bank. I was sitting at my desk at work, reviewing a data set, when my phone buzzed. Suspicious activity detected. My stomach dropped. Someone had attempted to transfer $10,000 from my savings account. The attempt had been blocked by two-factor authentication, but I knew immediately who it was. My mother. The realization left me both furious and hollow. Even after the court order, even after being told to stay away, she was still trying to claw her way into my life. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, about proving she could still reach me. I reported the attempt to Mark, my lawyer. He didn't hesitate. "This strengthens your case," he said, his voice calm but firm. "If she violates the restraining order again, she'll face real consequences." His words gave me a grim sense of satisfaction, but they didn't erase the ache in my chest, because beneath the anger was grief. Grief for the mother I never had, for the relationship that would never exist. I had spent years imagining what it would be like if she came back, if she apologized, if she explained, if she tried to make amends. But now I knew the truth. She hadn't come back for me. She had come back for what I could give her. Word of her actions spread quickly through the family. My Aunt Ruth, my mother's older sister, reached out to me one evening. Her voice was heavy with regret. "Emma," she said, "I'm so sorry. Marie's been like this since we were kids, manipulative, always chasing something better, always leaving wreckage behind. She's borrowed money from everyone in the family, lied to us, used us. You're not the first, and you won't be the last." Hearing that was strangely comforting. For so long, I had carried the weight of her abandonment as if it were my fault. But Aunt Ruth's honesty helped me see that my mother's betrayal wasn't personal. It was who she was. Meanwhile, my mother and Liam began to burn bridges. Friends and relatives grew tired of their lies, their constant demands, their entitlement. One by one, people cut them off. They moved to a smaller town, their social circle shrinking to nothing. It was a fitting consequence for their greed, but it didn't bring me joy. If anything, it left me with a hollow sadness, a reminder of how far she had fallen, and how far she had dragged Liam with her. But I couldn't carry her choices anymore. I had carried them for too long. That's when I decided to see a therapist. Her name was Dr. Ellen Brooks, a calm, patient woman who listened without judgment. In our first session, I spilled everything: the abandonment, the years of silence, the sudden reappearance, the demands, the hacking, the restraining order. She listened quietly, then said something that changed me. "You've carried her failures as if they were your own, but they're not. Her absence was her failure, not yours." Those words cracked something open inside me. For years, I had wondered why I wasn't enough for my mother to stay. But Dr. Brooks helped me see that it had never been about me. It had always been about her. Through months of therapy, I learned to let go of the guilt. I learned to stop asking why and start focusing on what now. I began to understand that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about refusing to let it define me. And slowly, I began to rebuild. For so long, my life had been defined by survival. First, surviving my mother's abandonment, then surviving the poverty that followed. Later, surviving her sudden reappearance and the chaos she brought with her. But after the restraining order, after the failed attempts to break into my accounts, after the truth had finally been dragged into the light, I realized something. I didn't want to live in survival mode anymore. I wanted to live. Therapy with Dr. Brooks became my anchor. Week after week, I sat in her quiet office, sunlight streaming through the blinds, and unpacked the weight I had carried for decades. She helped me see that my mother's choices were never about me, that her absence, her cruelty, her greed, none of it was a reflection of my worth. For years, I had asked myself, why wasn't I enough for her to stay? But the answer was simple. It was never about me. It was about her. Letting go of that guilt was like shedding a skin I had outgrown. Painful, raw, but necessary. Slowly, I began to see myself not as the abandoned child, but as the woman who had built a life from ashes. And with that realization came a new purpose. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who worked 3 jobs in high school, who studied by flashlight, who cried quietly into her pillow but never gave up. I thought about all the kids out there living that same story, kids who needed someone to believe in them. That's when the idea came to me, a foundation. I poured part of my income into creating a small charity in Orlando, dedicated to supporting children from struggling families. We offered scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources I had once craved. I named it the Carter Fund, in honor of my father, the man who had carried me through the darkest years. Launching it wasn't easy. There were late nights, endless paperwork, and moments of doubt. But I wasn't alone. My friend Kara, a social worker, helped me design the programs. My colleague Nia built the website. My neighbor Ryan spread the word through his community network. For the first time, I felt surrounded by people who showed up not because they wanted something from me, but because they believed in what I was building. And my father. Oh, the pride in his eyes when I told him about the foundation. He came to the launch event, standing in the back of the room with tears glistening in his eyes as I spoke about resilience, about turning pain into purpose. Later, he hugged me tighter than ever before and whispered, "Emma, you've turned our story into hope for others." Those words meant more than anything. Life began to feel different, lighter. I filled my apartment with laughter, hosting dinners for friends who had become my chosen family. We celebrated birthdays, toasted to promotions, and comforted each other through setbacks. They reminded me daily that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by choice. By the people who stay, who lift you up, who see your worth without conditions. One evening, as I sat around the table with my father, Kara, Nia, and Ryan, I looked at the faces lit by candlelight and realized something profound. I wasn't missing anything anymore. For years, I had carried the ache of my mother's absence like a wound that would never heal. But now, surrounded by love and support, I understood that I had everything I needed. Family isn't the people who share your DNA. Family is the people who choose you. And I had been chosen. So when I think about my mother now, I don't feel anger. I don't feel longing. I feel nothing. She no longer has power over me. Her absence no longer defines me. Her betrayal no longer shapes me. I am Emma Carter. I am 33 years old. I am a daughter, a friend, a mentor, a survivor. And finally, I am free.